Hey Ryan, thank you so much for showing up and taking out the time for this.
Hey Usman, thank you very much for the invite. Excited to chat about SEO or marketing.
Yeah, well, I'm super pumped for this interview. Um, I've known you for, I think, more than an year now, and you are one of the few people that I really look up to. Like your, I think, career trajectory is pretty much similar to mine. Like you've been in agency, you've been in SaaS SEO. Now I guess like we're in different worlds slightly, but still, maybe we have a big overlap. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation and really pumped and excited to dive into the themes that I have in my mind to explore.
Yeah, it will be great. I always enjoy talking to you. I know we tend to catch up once every few months or so, and there's always a lot of overlap, mutual interest. So yeah, excited to dive into it.
Awesome. So let's get started then. So I want to start with your overall experience, the kind of background that you have professionally. So you've worked at both agencies and SaaS companies in the past. I believe you were in an agency, then you went to Toggle, then you came back to an agency, Scale, right? And then you joined Modash at this point. So both agency and SaaS companies have different work dynamics. How has your work life, changed compared to when you were working in an agency versus now working in-house as a strategist? Now, like, you got promoted and now you're head of marketing. What does your day-to-day look like in these two different work settings?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, firstly, that is right. Last four roles have been agency in-house, and yeah, there's definitely some differences between them. I think on the positive side for the agency, I think I would say that I recall learning like subject matter expertise a lot faster in an agency. So for example, for me to actually learn SEO, to get to work on several different sites and to coordinate like the dynamics of different team structures and so on. Um, that was really helpful, especially when you focus on a niche like B2B SaaS. If you get to work with like 4 to 8 B2B SaaS businesses at the same time, you really start to like see the patterns and what is working and learn from other people. You just generally have a bigger network, get exposed to more people and successes. So that's really cool. And then on the flip side, in house, of course, like naturally you understand the product and the space like so much deeper, and you generally have like more personal influence. And there's also, I would say, a lot more execution as well. Like, of course, in an agency, you spend, I would say, more time on like reporting and getting buy-in and kind of trying to justify like your expense to the client. You know, this is like a big part of the job. And there is still that in-house as well. You know, you still need to justify your existence to an extent, but it's definitely less. Like, there's more just hands-on execution and a little bit less reporting and yeah, buy-in type tasks. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, totally. I'm thinking, would you say for your own career when you were starting out, did you make this conscious choice that I want to start with an agency to, have this diverse experience of working with different projects and like, just like getting a broad level experience overall to start with, or was it like just it just happened?
Yeah, well, actually, the very first agency that we were talking about, I was actually one of the co-founders of that agency, and the way that came about was kind of a strange journey. I'd started a cleaning business actually. I'd built a website with a WordPress template where you could go and book cleaners online. So I was trying to kind of apply a marketing skill set to build a cleaning business and then outsource the jobs to like self-employed cleaners, and that was kind of like the business model. And it was also where I kind of got my first like real taste of like Google Ads and SEO and so on, just like driving bookings for this cleaning business. Um, and as I like learned those skills and started to talk to other business owners who needed those skills, there was like a very clear opportunity for me to offer like that kind of stuff on a freelance basis, built like a bit of extra cash on the side. So I did that, and I very quickly learned it's just more profitable and easier to do than to try and run a cleaning business. Um, it was a very attractive prospect not having to deal with like a cleaner being off sick and going, running out to some house with a hoover and a mop to go cleaning, So that was kind of my entrance into that world. I ended up partnering with a web developer, and we made like a small local agency. And at the point where I left, I kind of burnt myself out with that. And I think we had around 8 full-time people when I left, and joined Toggle. So the answer to the question is that it was not really intentional, no. But I did enjoy many aspects of the agency life.
Right. And was it like the agency life itself, like the work dynamic of it, that got you to a stage where you were burning out and couldn't handle the work, etc.? Or was it more about owning an agency and just like, having to run a business on your own? Because you then went back to the agency life, right? So I assume it's more on the running a business on your own side of things, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I would say it's not that in itself. It's just also that I was very inexperienced, and we ran the business quite badly. I think if I would ever do that again, which I don't intend to, but if I would, I can imagine doing it a lot better. Picking clients better, managing them better, hiring better, just everything across the board. And at that point in my career as well, I was so inexperienced. I was one of those classic like small local agencies where you basically just do anything for anybody. This person needs Google shopping ads management or whatever. Like, great, yeah, I can do that. It's going to be X pounds per month, and then I'll just go and Google like how to do Google shopping ads. That was like literally how I got started in the first couple of years, and that's just a very stressful way of working. Long hours, and also because each client was paying relatively little, like we had to have like huge volume of clients, and that was stressful in itself. So yeah, I think it's not agencies like as a model as a whole. It was just some like bad decisions and inexperience that led to that. I think obviously the big advantage of it is just that I learned like an extremely fast pace.
Yeah.
That's where the burnout came from.
Yeah. I guess perhaps it's like when it comes to local agencies, maybe just an opinion, I could be wrong. Since they are typically dealing with like low ticket kind of clients, like they don't pay a lot. And of course, they cannot pay a lot because they're like small businesses. I feel like when agencies don't, set specific boundaries around the scope of things that they're going to do and like try to own all of it, then it gets like badly managed, right? Like, because for bigger companies, you can never do enough. For smaller companies, if they have bigger expectations and you have this mismatch of what you can do versus what they expect, then it gets really tricky. And in most cases, people will just like spend more time working and overall just like deteriorate their mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many differences. I mean, one other thing as well specifically with local businesses, I remember is just that, like now that we work in SaaS, every call pretty much is like planned in advance. It's on the calendar. It's arranged. Like you have the time to prepare for it, and maybe there's an agenda a lot of the time, and so on. Whereas when I worked with local clients, like they would just ring me on my mobile phone, like whenever it was good for them. So it was not uncommon for my phone to ring like 20, 30 times a day, just at random times. And obviously it's just impossible to get any deep work done. So you're constantly just kind of on a treadmill, like trying to stay afloat. You're not like able to develop the business because you're just dealing with like one thing at a time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But so before we move on, would you say, just to wrap up this one little topic here, would you say for anyone starting out in SEO, is starting with an agency still a good thing early on? Or like, what are your thoughts in general? Is this like a good blueprint to apply if you're just starting out in the field?
I think it is, yeah. Obviously there isn't one path that kind of fits all
Yeah.
needs and wants and preferences, but I think if you work in an agency and you have maybe at least one of your own sites on the side, I think that's probably like the optimal environment for learning SEO really quickly. There are definitely circumstances where you can learn a lot really quickly in-house as well, especially if you get to work with people that you can learn from on a like really regular basis. Although you can get that in an agency as well. I think having access to multiple different websites at the very least, with slightly different setups. Maybe they use a different CMS. Maybe they have different types of content. Maybe they have different, like one has technical issues, another one has content challenges. I think in terms of breadth of knowledge, it's definitely a great way to learn.
Okay, so moving on to Modash. You've joined this company. It's a SaaS company, an influencer marketing platform for those who don't know. So they typically, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but they provide you information on different influences about, for example, engagement rate or fake followers or other kind of things that you can then apply on influencer marketing, right? That's what this product does. Correct me if I'm wrong again, by the way. So talking of their, go on.
So sorry to interrupt, but yeah, the kind of quick pitch for Modash is that it helps you to find influencers, to check if they're a good fit. So like the things that you said, it can tell you like where their audience is based and how they perform, what are their like top content, who have they collaborated with in the past, and so on. And then once you have live campaigns with influencers, there's also a monitoring tool as well. So it helps you understand like which influencers have posted and when and how those posts performed. And yeah, that's kind of like the short version. But yeah, it's mostly used by like B2C companies that are that have at least one or more full-time influencer marketer.
And would you say like are agencies also your clients, as in using the platform?
We don't consider them like an ICP client. Like an ICP would typically be like an e-commerce brand. We do have hundreds of agencies that use Modash, although we don't specifically build for them. So like, for example, we don't have like white label reporting features and these kind of things that an agency would typically want. But they still use Modash to like find and analyze and monitor influencers on behalf of their clients. Yeah, it's just not purpose built for that.
Right. So if you were to walk me through your approach to building the SEO strategy for Modash, how would you say you arrange the things, especially having worked at scale, right, as a strategist and Toggle in the past as your marketing lead? Was there any SaaS SEO playbook that you developed or learned about, which you then applied to Modash in your initial days of joining the company?
Yeah, I would say there was actually. I think generally the easiest thing to do when you start a new role is always to like bring the playbook with you from the previous place. Like whatever was working then, you just bring it with you and apply it to the new place. And obviously there are limitations to that. There's an element of like figuring out what works for this specific company in that specific category and so on. But from scale, there was some really common themes, which I think now is a very standard playbook in B2B SaaS SEO, which is all that like the high intent kind of stuff. So all the how-to use case keywords, all the software keywords, all of the like alternatives and versus keywords. This is very kind of standard stuff now. But I'd seen a lot of success with that with my clients when I worked with Scale. I was able to bring that playbook kind of almost like copy and paste it straight into the influencer marketing space. And I found that was the quickest way for me to like provide some value and start growing the signups ASAP. And that worked really well. And that was like really most of the first year was the big focus. Just mapping out all of those topics that we needed to cover. We fulfilled them majority with freelance writers. I was the editor on the piece, and we moved like relatively quickly on that as well. And to give you an example of what I mean there, let's say we have a piece like we want to rank for find YouTube influencers, then the format is like X ways to find YouTube influencers. Number one is use Modash. Number two is like some other way of finding influencers. And typically when I got a draft back from the freelancer, I would edit like the intro and then the part about Modash to make that like as good as it can be. But then beyond that, I was like, let's just get it out. It doesn't really matter for now. and that is changing now as well. But in the early days, like for the purposes of speed, there's like obviously you're constantly trying to balance quality versus speed of execution. And in order to kind of get like points on the board and to get the needle moving really fast, that's kind of like the editing approach I took in the early days, is to, you know, that's the part that matters for conversion rate optimization. And then if someone doesn't convert at that point after like seeing the kind of the Modash pitch salute to their solution, then the rest of the article, it's like whatever the writer's written, it's good enough. Let's just publish it and move on to the next piece. So yeah, that was kind of the playbook. It was like map out the high intent stuff, do it as fast as we can. There was some link building, very little technical SEO. Yeah.
And having worked at scale, for example, with bigger companies, right? Like more mature companies, typically those kind of SaaS companies also have their own SEO team who would play a role. And now working at Modash, when you like instantly jumped onto this new venture, how different was it? Because you were the only SEO person, if I'm not wrong, working with a bunch of freelancers, right? Was it like very scrappy? Did you first build the process for it? Like, how did you approach it from, a raw process standpoint and a workflow standpoint?
Yeah, it was indeed, I would say, scrappy. Yeah, I was the first ever marketer, so there was nobody at all. Like there was no
Oh,
marketers, there was
okay.
no freelancers, nothing when I joined, which is actually quite impressive because the company had already got to 1 million ARR without that, which I think is great.
Hmm.
A good kind of sign of product market fit if you can do that without any marketing at all. So that's cool. But yeah, definitely prioritized just getting stuff done over mapping out processes, um, which again is like maybe shifting away a little bit now as we're a bit further along. But yeah, certainly in the early days, it was just about like from an SEO perspective, like these are all the demand that we can capture. This group of keywords, this amount of search volume. If I were to take a stab based on experience, what I expect the conversion rate to be, like this is like the potential number of signups we could get per month if we ranked for these keywords. Let's like prioritize them in that order and just knock them all out as quickly as we can with the budget and the resources that we have. And that was pretty much the process. There was nothing more kind of elaborate than that in terms of like planning or prioritization. There were certain topics, like I learned along the way that certain topics convert like better than others, and certain like use cases were how to describe it. Well, to illustrate what I mean, we have the monitoring feature that I mentioned, and customers that use monitoring are typically higher value to Modash because it's a stickier use case. So with the discovery use case, where you find influencers and you analyze their profiles, you get their email addresses for outreach and so on, that use case can be intermittent. Like you can recruit a bunch of influencers and then stop using the product and then reactivate again in 6 months when you need more and so on. Whereas if you're using Modash every week for monitoring, then like the churn is lower, the LTV is higher, all that kind of good stuff. So there was a point where I started to pursue those topics with that in mind. I was thinking that's like a better topic. So we started doing things like, how to measure influencer marketing KPIs, like how to track influencer content, like how to track influencer Instagram stories before they disappear, like all this kind of stuff. And I found that not only did those topics convert at a lower rate, but also the volume was just way lower as well. So kind of like from a high level business strategy perspective at that point, we decided to just go where the search volume was, which was finding influencers. There's over 1,000 searches a month for find influencers, but maybe 50 a month for tracking influencer content or something like that, right? So it's drastically higher in the discovery kind of use case. And then, so that's kind of like our priority from a go-to-market perspective. It's also where our product is the strongest. And then we'll try and push monitoring adoption from there. We'll get them through the door with discovery because that's where the volume is. And then we'll try and push the adoption of other features to increase stickiness and reduce churn once they've already signed up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And in like when it comes to the actual content, were you using product-led content kind of a model? Like, for example, how to find influencers. If I go on the page shows me how to find influencers using Modash. Or is it like more generic information and then one or two plugs of the product?
Yeah, well, with the examples that we've used so far, like, so we'll reuse the example of how to find YouTube influencers. If you look at the search results, the intent is very clearly like people are looking for like X ways to find influencers. So that one's pretty straightforward. So there's multiple different ways. Like we show you how to search on YouTube directly. We show you how to, I don't know, ask for referrals or like whatever. I can't remember the other methods at the moment, but the first one is use Modash. So that one that's how that works. There are other posts which are just purely almost like product tutorials that they can almost like double as a support document, but they're kind of designed for acquisition. So what I mean by that is we have one example. I don't know if maybe we can edit it onto the screen or something that I've mentioned before, how to check audience demographics. This one's a really successful example. It literally just shows you step by step how to check audience demographics using Modash. There is also a short section at the bottom saying like, if you don't have a tool, like here's the completely free way to do it, but like these are the limitations of it, which is basically just to email manually the influencer and ask them to send their screenshots, like whatever Instagram analytics tells them.
Right.
But yeah, so there's a lot of like use case content like this, like how to plus use case, how to check influencer engagement rate, or how to check audience demographics, how to check follower growth rate, like these kind of things, where there's like a very specific use case. So we've done a lot of those. And we do have some informational content as well, things that are not designed to directly convert. Purely from an SEO perspective, some of them originally were just for the purposes of building topical authority with the long-term goal of ranking the high intent pieces. But lately we've started to move a little bit more towards like just generally helpful content and not worrying too much about the immediate conversion, which maybe we can get into a little bit later on if we start to think like outside of SEO a little bit.
Yeah. So one thing that you mentioned when you were talking about the playbook, right? Like, for example, typically the things that we do for SaaS SEO, I feel like most SaaS companies, have a couple of standard SEO best practices when it comes to their content strategy. Make sure you have feature pages, create some bottom of the funnel demand capturing content like listicles. And, that's pretty much like, or a couple of alternative pages, right? Like better alternatives. And that's like 90% of your SaaS SEO done. But you did something that was quite interesting. And I think you posted on you posted on LinkedIn about this, mentioning that you have a alternative page for Modash. So like you're targeting the term Modash alternatives, right? Walk me through the process of that idea.
Yeah, so I mean, the idea came from a couple of places. I mean, one is that I've already seen other SaaS brands doing this. I think ClickUp was the first brand that I saw executing on that years ago when I worked at Toggle on Toggle Plan in like a similar kind of space. I came across that. And secondly, I found the keyword in Search Console. I typed in queries containing alternatives, like to see if there's any other ideas for alternatives content, like as you do, standard kind of keyword research, and found that the searches for Modash alternatives was actually starting to grow. So, I thought that was an opportunity, obviously, to kind of step into the SERP at that point and either and just influence the decision, right? So like either it's going to be a customer who's thinking about looking elsewhere, or it's going to be a prospect who is like still like in the consideration phase, like, okay, we've discovered Modash, what else is out there? And either way, you still want to be part of the conversation. It was relatively easy to rank. We've never built any links to that page, and yet it ranks number one. And I think because we had that data in the Search Console as well, that was like long before anything would appear in Ahrefs or SEMrush as well. I'm not sure if it does now, but certainly at the time, Ahrefs and SEMrush displayed 0 for Modash alternatives, Modash competitors in terms of search volume. So yeah, it wasn't really on anybody else's radar. So we thought, like, let's just create the page. It's a lot easier generally to retain a number one spot than it is to knock someone else off the number one spot. So let's just do it. Have a bit of influence in that like point in the journey. And I think right now it gets maybe like somewhere between like 80 and 120 visits a month. we've had a couple of prospects, like literally word for word, say like the Modash alternatives page answered my questions for me. That's why I converted. I've even seen some like customers convert from that page based on first touch attribution, which obviously can't be true. You know, it can't be the first time they discovered Modash, otherwise they wouldn't know to search Modash alternatives. But yeah, there are some positive signals from that, and it was relatively low effort. Like, this is my point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I feel like this is one of the best examples of how, we say that SEO is not just a good channel for acquisition. Of course, like for acquisition, that's like the biggest use case, but then you can also use it for, things like retention or, like just like controlling churn or those kind of things. Like, of course, this is a more of a tactical example, but if we just like extrapolate this and, for bigger companies that are like, that have more mature brands, maybe if they have a very well thought of help section, support section, very well indexed in Google, and it's like answering all of the questions around any objection that a potential customer might have that might change their decision of not like being a customer anymore, then that will definitely have a retention effect. I also think this one kind of a page, of course, as you mentioned, it's very easy to rank for this kind of a term because you have the authority for Modash and like you own the brand. But technically speaking, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, why would Google allow a company to talk about its like own alternative page, like from a user standpoint? It feels like one of those classical Google algorithm flaws that people are taking advantage of.
Yeah, I actually agree. It is. It would be logical for like a respected independent third party like G2, for example, to rank for that. But I think
Yeah.
G2 alternative pages, just as an example, are generally not that helpful anyway. And I think that we've actually recently been able, for a long time, we got stuck behind G2 with a lot of alternatives rankings. We'd typically hit the number 2 or number 3 spot and then kind of get stuck behind them. And recently, without really doing anything, we've overtaken them. And I do wonder whether, just from a brand perspective, like people have like learned over time that those G2 pages are actually not very good. They don't really answer your questions about like what are the real differences between the tools. And like people just stop clicking them, like a super like long-term brand effect. That if they're not very helpful, people will remember that, and next time they won't click it if they see G2, and they'll maybe click something else, which is very difficult to measure or forecast for or plan for, or whatever. But maybe just a theory.
Yeah. So you've helped Modash take from, you mentioned when you joined them, they were sitting at 1 million ARR, and now they're close to 4 million, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
And then now you're trying to get them to 10 million, right? Like that's the goal that you have for the next couple of years, I imagine. Has anything changed for you from a mental perspective? Like when you think of your objective being, 4 million or, a smaller number, let's say when you got started, versus now that you're planning for 10 million ARR, is there any decision-making process or any, a level of thoughtfulness that you see in your content or overall strategy planning as a head of marketing?
Yeah, there's quite a few things actually, to the point where I'm not sure where to start exactly. But I think maybe one interesting topic is that I'm really starting to think about brand a little bit more than before. So where I previously described that, like in the first like 6, even 12 months, it was all about just getting points on the board and getting the numbers, the KPI trending up, and like proving that I can do the job and get the results and so on, and not worrying, like, again, reusing that example where we post like how to find YouTube influencers, and the first bit is like super helpful, like perfect content, and then beyond that, like I haven't really taken a look at it and edited it properly. Like now I'm kind of going the other way and thinking about like the long-term brand, like what people think about Modash, and I really kind of have this vision of within the influencer marketing space, like if you Google anything to do with influencer marketing, whether it's high intent or not, like whether our product does it or not, even other things like influencer briefing or influencer outreach, negotiations, like any part of the workflow, I kind of want to build the brand to the point where people know that if they Google that, not only will they find Modash content on it, but it will be amazing end to end. And that's kind of like the long-term brand effect. And I didn't feel like I could afford to spend enough like time and attention on that in the early days. I really felt like I just needed to move the needle as fast as possible. But now we kind of have that SEO content engine running. We have all of these blogs and these free tools and the programmatic stuff, which maybe we'll talk about in a bit. All of that stuff is generating signups every month, and it almost kind of creates some breathing room for us to work on the quality a bit more. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe there's more to unpack there, but I'd say that's one of the biggest ones, is that like we go from barely thinking about like a long-term brand at all to really starting to be like a serious consideration in terms of like the quality of every piece of content that we put out. Like the bar is getting higher and higher.
Right. And how is that playing a role in your, like how you're thinking about your own skills development? Because you've been an SEO guy for a long time, right? Like that's one of your strong skill sets. How are you thinking of evolving? Like, are there certain areas that you want to learn more about overall in SaaS marketing? Having dominated SEO as a channel, or having done it for a couple of years now, is there an intersection of where Modash want to go and the kind of channels you would need to tap into and the skills you would need to learn in order to get there?
Yeah, interesting question. So I think there's two kind of big areas that I need to personally develop in. One of them is simply leadership. Like right now, I would describe myself more as a kind of a marketing team captain rather than like a marketing leader. Like I'm very much still on the pitch. Our full-time team is only 3 people. We have quite a lot of external resources as well. Like we have freelancers for link building and content writing and design, which I'm like responsible for managing. But the full-time in-house team is only 3 people, including myself. And so with a team that small, like you can't just be a manager. So I'm really trying to balance like execution versus like developing people and strategy and like high level leadership stuff. And that's a really big challenge actually. Trying to figure out where's the right line within that. So that's one area is leadership. And the second area is like creative sort of. And our CEO, Avery, I've talked to him about this, and he kind of describes it about as like going from being a scientist to an artist, kind of like where SEO is the science, everything is driven by like conversion rates and search volume and the potential and so on. And it's a bit more sciencey to art, which is like, for example, we started a YouTube channel, we started a podcast, we started posting on LinkedIn and so on. And there's certain elements within like making a video, like what makes a great intro hook, giving feedback to a video editor is new territory for me as well. Figuring out like what makes a thumbnail great to get more clicks on YouTube, all this kind of stuff. So that creative side is kind of new to me, and the leadership side is a work in progress. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, totally. I think leadership is definitely a big one. Like I've learned it the hard way, to be honest, because when I got put into, like, of course, my CEO invested a lot in training me, but then you only really learn about managing a solid team when you are actually doing it, right? Like even in a freelance setting, as you mentioned, working with so many people and then just like owning the responsibility of their performance overall is a really big responsibility, and doing it well is kind of hard until you've actually been in the weeds. Okay, so awesome. I would love to jump into programmatic SEO now, as it is the topic, and it's like a big theme that I have for this interview, simply because you've done a phenomenal job with those programmatic pages on Modash. And it's like really exciting just to see how they're, like I quote your example so much, even in my own company. And, if I'm like consulting with someone or giving example to anyone, Modash is like one of the top level examples that I have when I talk about, oh, so this is how you can create a leverage using your own product's data somehow, and mixing it up with programmatic SEO. So where did you get the inspiration for building these programmatic pages for Modash? Was this a use case you had in your mind from the beginning, or did you ideate this at later stages? How did that, light bulb moment happen in your mind? And by the way, I asked this question because I'm not sure, like, did you have experience with programmatic SEO in scale, or like in your past experience? How did this first came into your mind? Like, this is something that I want to explore.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I had no idea that you cited it as an example. That's great to hear. Regarding where the idea came from, I mean, there's a few kind of inputs. One big one is that somebody from the product team actually had previously tried to do this in a slightly different way with no-code tools in Webflow. It never actually got to the point of having traffic. But like the kind of the idea and the foundation existed already. Secondly, yes, I had a little bit of experience from scale clients. And third, there are competitors in this space that had already done that as well. So I kind of came across that during competitor research. So it was like, it wasn't like my personal light bulb moment exactly. Like there was just like signals from various places that like, okay, clearly there's like something here. Yeah, I mean, shall I go into like what were the steps to get started with this? Or?
Sure, let's go. And by the way, just for the record, I think a light bulb moment can still happen if you just found inspiration from other people. So I would still give the credit to you for that.
Cool. Well, so yeah, in terms of how we got started. So, firstly, in terms of how we built it and resourced it, like there isn't really a tech stack involved. Like it's just hosted directly on AWS. And in terms of how we resourced it, yeah, we just stole an engineer from product basically. So we kind of made like a growth engineering team, which currently doesn't exist anymore. It was like a temporary thing where we had an engineer come over and work on some free tools and the programmatic side of the SEO strategy. And yeah, we started out, there was not really much keyword research involved, which is something that sometimes people are surprised to hear. It was more about like identifying the pattern. So clearly we can see that like, okay, people search for influencers in New York. People also search for influencers in like whatever Spanish city, whatever like Indian city. Like there's a pattern here. Like influencers in city always has search volume, for example. So instead of like trying to identify like what are the top cities to do that with, we just basically got a big list of all the like, top 1,000 cities by population. I think we started with originally, and then we cross-referenced that with which cities were available to search in Modash, which was most of them, and we just generated all the pages, and that's kind of what we got started with. And then after I think it was about 6 months, I just went into the analytics and found which pages had never had any clicks, and we deleted those. And found that was a kind of a more efficient way to do it rather than trying to nail the pages first time round that would have traffic, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So like I imagine, sorry to interrupt. I imagine when you were planning, you thought of different variables that could be used. So for example, city is a variable for your programmatic pages, right? But then so is the category, if I'm not wrong, like fitness influences in Chicago or Columbia, wherever, right? So were those two variables planned by you like in advance? Like these are the two variables we're going to go with, and this is how we want to templatize this?
Yeah, well, in the very beginning, I think we started only with countries and cities. So we'd have like a country page, like, influencers in UK, whatever. And then there'd be internal links on that page to all the UK city pages. Like at the bottom, you'd find, influencers in London, influencers in Manchester, like whatever. And yeah, since then we have built out more. So, for example, micro influencers or fashion influencers category, like you said. So now as well, we would have like find influencers /Greece /fashion or /micro, like whatever. We have those variation pages. And we also have the platform variations. So we'd have like /TikTok /Greek Greece, and it would be like it'd rank for Greek TikTokers or TikTok
Right,
influencers in
right, right.
Greece, whatever. And this worked well. And as well as that, we have now also just niches without a location attached, so like fishing influencers or tennis influencers or sports betting influencers, pregnancy influencers, all kinds of things like that. And those were a bit more keyword research driven, and they all kind of have to follow the same pattern. Basically, how it works is like in Modash, when you run a search, you apply certain filters. You say, show me all the people that have like between X and Y number of followers with a minimum engagement rate, and their audience has to be in this location or whatever. So there was a lot of like trial and error there to make the results really good quality, like figuring out like how we should even like rank the results. Like, for example, we can rank the results by highest engagement rate or by the most followers. Or we can rank them by like who has the highest percentage of their audience in that location. Like there's loads of different ways to do it, and we had a bit of trial and error. We also made some fallbacks as well. So, for example, if we set the bar kind of high and we say like, what are the top 20 results that have like a minimum 5% engagement rate? Sometimes with a really obscure city with a smaller population, there'd only be like 2 results or something. It just didn't work. So then we have fallbacks. So like if the results is less than X, then reduce this filter by that much, instead of at least 50% of the audience in that location, then reduce it to 30, then run it again. Now, how many results do we have? Like that's all just coded. So it all kind of works automatically.
Love this.
But where was I going with this? Maybe one question
I believe,
that you...
Go on.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that, usually people also ask about like the duplicate content. So maybe I can talk
this was something that I just wanted to jump into. I think like if you could just, handle 2 to 3 different objections and how you tackled those in your programmatic SEO project, that would be awesome. So like programmatic, duplicate content is one of them. But then also indexation. I'm not sure how many pages did you publish together, but some people are also concerned about how do we get all of these pages indexed faster? Would they get into that bucket of crawled but not indexed category in Google Search Console? So how do you see duplicate content and indexation? If you could talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think on the duplicate content side, I guess in this specific example, we have the advantage that on every single page that we do like 20 influencers per page, and they're always unique according to the location and the filters that are applied. So that kind of just already solves the issue for us. Like, above that, we have some text. I don't know if maybe we can like edit image onto the screen or something to show it, but the text above the list of influencers is all fully templated. So it'll say something like, I don't know, we found X number of influencers on platform with audiences in location, like whatever. And like the text would be fully templated, and we just replace the variables like the location, the platform, give it YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, and the number of influencers that are like in the results. And then there'll be like a 1-sentence pitch, like, you can customize this search, or you can see all the results, whatever, like if you sign up to Modash. So yeah, we just went with templated content. I figured if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out. We'll do something different, but it worked first try. So that's never been a problem for us. And again, I think it's because the results like satisfy the search intent. If you search for fishing influencers, all you want is a list of fishing influencers, right? So as long as you get that and they're all different and unique and they match kind of what you're looking for, then everything's good. So that's that. And then on the topic of indexation, I think, the main thing that we thought about in the initial like design of the project is simply internal linking. So we have what we call like a find influencers homepage, which is like the programmatic homepage, and on there we have a couple of things. One, we just copied off Zapier. So if you look at Zapier's Zapbook, they have just A to Z of every integration that they have. There's just thousands and thousands of them just listed alphabetically. It looks awful, but presumably it's just there for internal linking. So we copied off that, and we have like an A to Z. So you can click on a letter and it will show you all the pages that we have that match that letter. The actual design of that page is kind of horrible, but because almost everybody enters the programmatic pages through a specific page, not through the home page. Like it doesn't get used very often, so it's not really a high priority to update it. But yeah, so that's how that works. And then, as I mentioned before, we also have the internal links. So like when you're on a country, it will link you to all the cities in that country, but then also like the other platforms. So if you're on Instagram influencers in Greece, then it will show you all the Greek cities, and it will also show you like YouTube influencers in Greece, micro influencers in Greece, TikTok influencers in Greece, beauty influencers in Greece, and so on. They'll all like auto-populate on the page. And again, like there are some design flaws. Like it's not super pretty, but it works. And again, like we've never actually had any problems. That's what we did from day one. We've never had any problems. I don't know if it would have still indexed even if we didn't do that. Gut feeling is that it might not have, but yeah, this approach is working for us so far.
Nice. Well, I think on the matter of duplicate content, by the way, the way I respond to that question, because some people also ask about that to us. Sometimes our own clients and then people on social media. I just had the last conversation, the last podcast episode with Jacob from Active Campaign, the director of content marketing, and we were talking about programmatic SEO since he had experience with it at G2 before coming at Active Campaign, and I like what I personally believe is perhaps people fear about keyword cannibalization and content cannibalization when they talk about programmatic content. And I personally think maybe there's no such thing as keyword cannibalization. Maybe what actually exists is search intent cannibalization, right? So if there are two pages and they, even if they have a lot of content overlap, like, oh, the H1 is similar or, something like that, but they offer, like, maybe you make some tweaks and you shift the search intent, right, by just like changing a one word on the page, and it makes sense for the users and Google as a crawler that, okay, so these two pages are now serving different kind of intent for the user, then that would make sense. And that means even if there's a lot of content overlap, that wouldn't cause duplicate content issues. Like this is how you know this, right? Like most of the companies, G2 is a really good example. Most of their content is, I think, templatized, but then the information on those pages change, right, for different software. So like, because they know for every SaaS company, a searcher only wants to know about a couple of things, like, what are the features, what can I do with it, the pricing, the views, and multiple things which are going to be repeated.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is logical. I think the thought process that you would have to go through then, if you were deciding, like, is this right for me, is like, do you have pages that solve that particular search intent, right? Like, yeah, it applied to our case. Like, we have lots of content on how to find influencers, but if you just search, influencers in New York, you don't want a how-to guide on how to find influencers in New York. You just want a list of influencers in New York, and that is, I can see why someone might suspect there'd be some degree of like cannibalization there, but yeah, you're right. It is completely two different search intents, and in fact, like, again, just using our example, like a lot of people that search influencers in New York are like consumers as well. So if 70% of them are consumers, but 30% of them are ICPs that want to hire influencers in New York, then we still have to satisfy both sides in order to rank. And we would never do that with our blog content, because we wouldn't go and manually just write a list of influencers, because it just wouldn't be viable, because it wouldn't convert highly enough. Whereas, these pages for us, they have a lower conversion rate than our blogs do, but it's compared to the resources and the cost that we put in, like, it's ROI positive, if that makes sense.
And you mentioned you also were getting links built for Modash, right? Through a bunch of freelancers, and you had outsourced that part, if I'm not wrong. Were you building links to these programmatic pages as well?
Actually, no. We have picked up a few naturally. Like, some of the pages that rank number one have picked up their own links. Like, I think Melbourne influencers, the city in Australia. Like, someone was writing an article about influencer marketing in Australia and just must have presumably Googled that, found the first result, and cited it as a resource. So yeah, we get a few earned links, but no, we don't build links to any specific page at the moment, and it's partly just because I think the individual potential of each page is relatively low. Like, in fact, we actually already have hundreds and hundreds of page one rankings. Like, if you look up the subfolder in Ahrefs and just sort by position, you'll have to click through several pages before you start seeing number two positions. And so, yeah, I think like we measure that project like collectively. There isn't like I don't go through and pick out like one page that's ranking position 5 and say like, okay, if this page ranked number 1, we'd get plus X traffic and signups. Like, let's figure out how we do it. We really just look at the project like as a whole. Or maybe you can divide it into like, we look at all the country pages together. Like, okay, all of the micro influencer pages are underperforming. Like, what is the reason behind that? And kind of think about the edits in bulk rather than trying to pick like a specific page and increase that page's rankings, if that makes sense. And so that follows through to link building as well. We don't pick like one specific page and make it a link target.
Got it. Yeah, that makes total sense. And if I'm not wrong, most of the programmatic pages for Modash are top of the funnel content. So I assume the objective for these pages is to get as many users aware of Modash and get into the funnel and not necessarily attain signups directly. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no, in that, so yeah, as I said before, a lot of people that search for influencers in a niche or a location are not necessarily marketers. Enough of them are that makes this worthwhile for us, but not everybody is. So that's one kind of factor that we have to consider. But yeah, what we kind of do on those pages is that we deliver the results. Like, this is the influencer. We kind of prove visually that that person is a fit for the search. So if it's a location-based search, we show you like the top 3 cities or countries that that person's audience is in. So if you search Greek influencers, we prove to you that like, okay, this influencer has 80% of their audience in Greece. Like, great. And then we also kind of tease like a couple more data points that would be available inside Modash. So there's a couple of like buttons. I can't remember what the exact copy is on the CTA now, but it's something like, check full profile analysis or something like that. And again, when you click that, it will show you kind of like blurred out charts and things. It's designed to help you understand that there is actually a tool behind this that is delivering this data, and that if you sign up for a free trial, then all of these other data points would be available. And so, yeah, as I said, the conversion rate is lower than our blogs, but we still have several pages that convert above, like, let's say 5% from visit to trial, which is pretty good overall. And in total, the subfolder, I think in September, drove around about 500 trial signups. And how I define that is it's an amplitude chart that says, like, show me all of the people who viewed a page containing find-influencers / before they signed up, and the number is about 500. And so yeah, it's not negligible. It does convert some customers and some signups, and some customers as well. Like, we have
okay, nice.
Obviously, attribution is a wider topic, but we have some customers where we can see that the find influencers page, like the programmatic page, was the first touch point that we can track, and then that person's become a customer later on. And that happened. The numbers are relatively small. You're talking like maybe up to about 5 customers a month, I would say, get added through that project. Yeah.
Right. No, it's really good. Like, of course, from a first touch standpoint, it makes total sense how someone will, get aware of Modash by landing on a page like this, and then maybe a couple of months later they signed up for the product and then become a customer. That makes a lot of sense. Like, as a mass brand awareness kind of a tool, which also supplements a couple of paying customers every now and then. So apart from these programmatic pages, you have some mini tool pages, right, on your website. And I noticed that out of the 5 highest traffic driving pages for Modash, I think 3 are those mini tools. In fact, I think one of your tool, if I'm not wrong, the fake follower check, is driving like way more traffic than in fact the homepage. So what was your thought process like when you were thinking of creating something like this? How did you plan on, because like there's definitely going to be a framework for this, right? Like you think of your product, do you then like dissect all of the use cases, all of the jobs to be done, something like that? How do you ideate for something like this where you can, like break down your tool into some mini tools pages?
Yeah, good question. I think like for us, it was the fake follower tool. Actually, it was a little bit different, and it was designed differently as well. But the fake follower tool is the only one that existed before I joined, and that did kind of like spark the interest in building more of them. But to answer your question about how to kind of ideate them, I think for us it's kind of like about unbundling the different things that your product does. And then checking if there's any search volume for it, basically. So the next one that we built after the fake follower checker was the engagement rate calculator. And again, like we saw that that's a key use case of Modash. Like there's search volume for like how to check engagement rates and so on. And yeah, the best way to solve that is with a tool that just does it for you. But then in that case, there is actually tens of thousands in detectable search volume for engagement rate calculator as well. And both with the fake follower checker and the engagement rate calculator, there's the same kind of issue as with the programmatic pages, where actually a really high percentage of those users are just influencers that are checking their own profiles, or just consumers that are curious about it, and not necessarily marketers. So for those tools, we have extremely high volumes. Like the fake follower tool, there's like, I don't know, 120, 130,000 in traffic per month, sometimes more. And yeah, we get loads of signups, and we do get customers from that, of course. But yeah, it's a quantity over quality kind of play, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And was it hard ranking for those keywords, like trying to get those pages to rank? Because I assume, I'm not sure about the competition though, but how competitive were those terms to target on those pages?
Yeah, well, yeah, they are tricky. With the engagement rate calculator, well, we have three of them. So there's like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram engagement rate calculators. And for the big one, Instagram, we've yet to hit number one, actually. So yeah, very, very difficult. We peaked at number 2, and I think we're currently somewhere around 3, 4 in the US. Have some initiatives in place to try and bump that up. But with the fake follower checker, one interesting thing that I've talked about in the past is that we use TikTok to like increase our like demand for the search in the first place. So I've posted about this on LinkedIn. You've probably seen it, but we partnered with a freelancer who posts tons of content, like how many fake followers does Ronaldo have or whatever, and then obviously there's no clickable links within the TikTok content, so the video format shows like typing in fake follower checker into Google, clicking on Modash's result, and then putting in the username and getting the result, and then who should we do next, and then next time you'll do a video on how many fake followers does Messi have, or Kim Kardashian, or something like that. And in the earlier days, some of those went really viral, like multiple millions in views on TikTok. And then obviously people were replicating that behavior. So they see in the video, like, okay, how do you get to this tool? You search fake follower checker and you click on Modash. So our click-through rate for that particular page is like extremely high. And that kind of acts as a moat almost for retaining the number one spot. And as well as that, we earn links. Now that we are number one, we earn backlinks kind of on autopilot as well. So that worked really well. And yeah, we're trying the same with the engagement rate calculator. That one, those few tools haven't been around as long. So like just general like age is a bit of a factor as well with the fake follower checker. It was just around for longer. We also have a free influencer search tool, which is similar to the engagement rate calculator, kind of ranks like 2, 3. But hasn't had as much attention because the obviously free in the search query is slightly lower intent, and the volume is lower as well. But yeah, I'm not sure if I've answered your question here, but
No, you did. I'm also thinking, like, for those tools, were you like, how did you got the ball rolling at the start? would you say, like, for example, did you specifically point some links towards them in order to get them to rank, or was it like did you not think of links or anything else? Was it just the standard stuff? Because right now, for example, with your fake follower tool, it looks like it's, you know, I'm not sure what the right term is. Perhaps the vicious cycle of SEO or something, um, where you get the page to rank. I think I talked about this maybe in a LinkedIn post sometime, and you might mention this exact page, right? The fake follower page, perhaps, where you said this is an example of that because you rank a page on top, it continues to gain more and more links passively, and then it just retains its own rank, and it becomes like this SEO mode in itself. But did you do something tactical in order to earn that rank, or was it just the standard stuff for you?
Yeah, well, with the fake follower checker, it was kind of the standard stuff, and then the TikTok thing was like the one differentiator. We did build some links as well manually, quite a few, probably like I don't know, maybe 20, 30, something like that.
Okay.
And with the engagement rate calculators, obviously this is the one that I started working on like pre-idea phase, whereas the fake follower checker had already existed and was already like page one ranking, and also had some like previous like kind of virality as well with TikToks. Like again, that wasn't an original idea. It was like that happened by accident, and then okay, like we talked to that person and can we pay you to do this like more and more and try and repeat the success. Like that's how that came about. But yeah, with the engagement rate calculators, part of it was just trying to design something that was better than the current ones. Like obviously that's always a great way to think with SEO. Like take a look at what's ranking number one and like how can we be more helpful than that. And in the case of the engagement rate calculator, it's things like okay, this number one tool provides it provides the engagement rate, but then we also added in like a benchmark. So like compared to creators with a similar number of followers within like 10 to 50k or whatever, like here's how they perform. They're above average, they're below average. There's like a chart that shows that. We show a couple of other data points as well, like the most popular posts and things like that. So yeah, the idea was like from a design perspective, just be more helpful. So that was one thing. And then obviously all the standard stuff as well. Like we try and build some links, we look for internal linking opportunities. And yeah, we will attempt to replicate the TikTok strategy with the engagement rate calculators as well. But
that one part is really interesting. You talked about TikTok, right? I'm thinking, like, apparently SEO is the biggest source of signups for Modash, right? Unless I'm wrong, and that makes sense since organic search was such a big channel for you. Opportunity-wise, also, this was one channel that you had a solid background in. So I'm assuming now at this stage, when you're thinking more high level and now you want to, move into other channels, you're testing it out with, for example, you mentioned this partnership with this influencer, freelancer, if I'm not wrong. At this stage, as a marketing leader overall, does it bother you that you have such a big reliance on SEO? And is that the reason, the motivation that you have for trying to get into other channels, like, for example, TikTok or other things? What's the core motivation for trying to tap into other channels at this point?
Good question. So I would say, like, yes, it is like mildly concerning to rely heavily on one channel. I would say that almost all of our signups and customers from Modash would be attributed in the traditional way to either organic search or like referral, like word of mouth, brand, like kind of difficult to track kind of things. We have a small Google Ads campaign that runs only for API like keywords, like our API product. And we have a couple of other small things going on as well. But yeah, mostly it's SEO and content and like for the acquisition stuff. And what we're exploring now is it's still content, but basically just not search-driven content. It's we're really trying to work on like collaborative content to get our ICPs involved in the content production process, and just to create helpful content that we maybe doesn't have any search demand and requires us to distribute it to get any eyeballs on it. But we just know, based on our knowledge of the industry and like what our customers tell us, like this is going to help you do your job better. And so some examples that we have of that is that like kind of fall within that category. We have the podcast is one of them. We don't
Yeah.
try to attribute revenue directly to that, but we learn a lot from it and deepen our relationships with customers, and we get like repurpose it into other content. And then we also have we've started doing surveys in the last couple of months. Well, we're literally on our second survey now, and the kind of the playbook that we're attempting to create and run at the moment is basically we pick a topic that kind of we know our customers are going to care about, and then we run a survey. We ask our customers to weigh in on it, and we also do some cold LinkedIn prospecting to bring more ICPs in and participate in that. We review the results and invite some of the great respondents to do a roundtable discussion, which is kind of like a podcast, but it's more like it's like a discussion with like 2, 3, 4 people, and we basically take the results of the survey and say like, okay, like on average people said this, but you said this, which is completely contradictory. Like, what do you think is going on here? Like, share different experiences. And again, to give a specific example, the current survey that's open is on Instagram influencer pricing, and one of the interesting questions is basically I've shown the survey participants some benchmarks. So there's a study, a really popular study by Later, which is on Instagram influencer pricing, and it basically says like for this follower range for a reel, it should cost this much. For this follower range for a story, it should cost this much or whatever. And I showed them those benchmarks and said like, is this accurate in your experience? And I have every answer. I've got from like, no, this is ridiculous, everything's way more expensive, to no, everything's way cheaper, and like everything in between. So it'd be really interesting to bring on some people and compare experiences. Like this person is seeing this in like Northern Europe, this person's seeing this in North America, this person is also in North America, but they've seen a completely different thing in beauty compared to fashion, like whatever, and have some really interesting discussions around that. So that's anyway, this is a really long-winded way to say that we have this playbook that starts with a survey, there's LinkedIn prospecting, there's a roundtable discussion, and then there's a write-up, and that's kind of like the how it's going to work. We're also going to launch a newsletter. It's content focused, not for product updates. And yeah, we just generally in blog content, we're swinging towards quality a bit more as well. We're getting experts involved. We're going back and updating some of the content that I hastily edited and got up just so that we could rank faster. And yeah, kind of all of these things fall just within the realms of like collaborating with ICPs and creating better quality, helpful content, and also kind of just building the brand a little bit. I really like the phrase, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I really want people who have a touch point with Modash content to remember it, and to for them to change the way that they think about something. Like I was going to do it this way, but then I read this article or watched this video, and then I decided to take that advice and do it this way. And that's the kind of content that you really remember, and you start to go back and look for it over time. And I think there's a huge gap in B2C influencer marketing. There's like so much terrible content, to the point where people, there doesn't seem to be like an industry leading content resource. Like I've asked around as many customers as I can, like, where do you go for your information? Like, is there a YouTube channel? Is there a blog that you really rely on? And I never get a good answer. Basically, they just don't know. Like there isn't a reliable source, and I really want Modash to fill that. And kind of just be the brand that be a content brand, right? Like be known for having the answers, if that makes sense.